I, 26 male, fell in love with my sister's partner. This began around a year ago when my sister had to travel for work for an extended period and her partner got into a bad car accident just a week after she left. Without going into too much detail, he needed someone to stay with him and help him get around for a while. I do freelance work from home to support myself, so they asked me if I could go and stay in their home for a time as her partner's temporary caregiver while he recovered. Of course, I immediately agreed, wanting to help in any way that I could. Her partner and I were already good friends before this situation, but living with someone and being there in their most intimate moments strengthened our bond even further. We bonded over our many shared interests and got to talk about more profound things that were typically off limits in a group setting. It was too late to distance myself from the situation when I realized my changing feelings. I had committed to helping him for the duration of his recovery, and a sudden change in my behavior would just tip him off that something was wrong and add unnecessary stress to an already challenging time. He had expressed feeling like a burden more than once, so I pulled away the little bit I could, and we rode out those last few weeks together before he got back on his feet again. To make a long story short, the period that followed was full of guilt from me and confusion for my sister's partner by my quick disappearance following our time together. He eventually texted me and asked if he had done something wrong during our time together that made me angry somehow. So we met up and I came clean. The conversation was a brutal one, and it eventually ended in both of us agreeing we would limit our time together from now on, as there was no hope for an actual future for us. It would simply be too weird given the history. Fast forward to now, the two of them got engaged somewhat recently, and this past Saturday, my sister asked me to be in her wedding as part of her bridal party. I asked her to let me think about it, which already caused some tension, and I told her yesterday that I was incredibly grateful for her offer but had to turn it down. I'm fine attending as a guest, but being in the wedding party just feels too much. She's now furious with me and is demanding I give her an explanation, which is something I've refused. Am I the idiot? Edit. He did reciprocate my feelings. We decided it was best kept between us, and he never told her anything about it to my knowledge. They didn't have a traditional proposal, and my sister was the one who initiated it. He told me that she knows he's bi. He told me that he respects my sister and doesn't want to end the relationship abruptly with no real reason he can disclose. He's had relationships with men in the past and she knows this. He and I text occasionally, but not often at all. See, here's the thing, OP. You aren't an idiot for developing initial feelings. It's not something you can generally control. However, you are a giant flaming idiot for admitting those feelings to her SO. You should have distanced yourself as much as possible when you developed feelings and never said a word. It almost feels like you wanted your sister's SO to admit reciprocated feelings. Secrets never stay secret. You essentially loaded the gun and cocked the trigger, and now it's just a waiting game before your actions blow up her life. You are the idiot for having an emotional affair with your sister's fiancé. Was it just emotional though? Did you sleep together? You already admitted the feelings were reciprocated. Why stop now? Your poor sister though. She deserves better than this. So grow a pair and tell her the truth. Don't let her marry someone who doesn't love her back. This is an unbelievable betrayal to your sister. You're a grown man acting like a love-struck teen who can't control themselves. You should never have spoken to her fiancé in the first place and created this godforsaken mess. Then hiding the fact that your sister's now fiancé admitted to having feelings back that you all met in secret to discuss, and now you're just going to let her marry someone who's had an emotional affair? Major idiot. Mistakes were made, my dude. My question for you is, do you really think she doesn't suspect something between you two? But honestly, what's your end game here? Are you hoping to keep this secret buried forever and hope you somehow forget this happened? How can you let her marry him when you know what you know? Like, what kind of brother does that? If I found out my sibling did this, it would be the end of our relationship. You're letting her marry someone who also has feelings for you. That's wrong. My parents were never married. I was a baby when they broke up. Dad was always around me when I was a baby, though. When I was 5, my mom met her husband. They lived about 20 hours from each other, and it put a strain on things. So about a year later, he moved himself and his 2 kids in with us. A decision was made when they got engaged to move. And even though my dad fought to retain custody of me, and even though we had 50-50 parenting time, my mom was granted permission to move me several hours away. Dad didn't like being away from me, so he moved to regain 50-50. Once that happened, they used the fact he was less financially stable post-move to get permission to move me again. It was really upsetting for 7-year-old me. I've always been a daddy's girl, and I missed having him around all the time. He was the dad to volunteer with my class, sign up for the field trip duty, to join me for extracurriculars. He would help me with homework. He'd pick me up from school on his Fridays. That stopped because he couldn't keep following us and worsening his financial situation. So I had a long-distance plan with him. But he never stopped being my dad. My mom's husband was not suddenly the number 1 man in my life. I made sure everyone knew he was not my dad. I made sure to talk about my dad all the time. This led to a strained relationship with my mom, and I often felt like she prioritized my step-siblings and later half-siblings over me. When I was 14, I asked my dad to fight for custody of me. He won. I then got to have him as my primary parent. A year later, I told my mom she made me feel less important than her stepkids and new kids. She told me those were the consequences of my rejecting our family and rejecting the man she loved. She said I made sure everyone knew I was not a true part of the family, so I had to live with the fact more would be invested in the kids who respected the whole family. I'm now 21. I'm engaged, and my wedding planning is going well. My mom didn't know I was engaged. She found out through another family member. Then she looked at my social media and saw that not only was my dad a part of the planning, but my future in-laws were playing a big role too. She called to chew me out over it and said I was excluding her from one of the biggest moments of my life and asked how I could do that. She also told me I'd hurt her feelings. I called her a hypocrite for that. I told her she rejected my family. She rejected the fact that I was not her husband's child and prioritized her other kids over me. I told her she wasn't important to me anymore, just like I was not important to her when I wouldn't embrace her husband. My choice of words set her off, and she called me childish for throwing what she said back in her face when that was different because she never neglected or ignored me. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Her first move was to get closer to her new husband, but the second one was merely to spite her old one and to deprive you of your father. She moved you away twice. What a cruel thing to do to both you and your father. How you feel about her is simply the consequences of her actions. She found out about your engagement from someone else and went through your social media to find out more, then called you to start trouble. When she called you, she didn't express any pleasure or joy for you or offer words of love, support, or affection. What she wanted was to be involved, whatever that meant, even though she's not really involved in the rest of your life. I suspect she wants to make the wedding about her and will try to insert members of her family into it. She did neglect you. Instead of harboring a properly blended family dynamic with healthy boundaries for all parties, she literally tried to force you to love your stepfather by making him your only option, which, thank goodness, didn't work. Who knows? Maybe if your mom had respect for your feelings, you'd have a better relationship with your stepfamily. She's reaping the consequences of her actions now and doesn't like it. You're well past the age where she has any control over you, your actions, and your decisions. Too bad, so sad for her. So I've, male 38, been divorced from my ex-wife 35 for 10 years, and we have 2 kids together, a tween male and a younger tween male. I remarried a year later while she's still single. I have 3 further kids, a tween female, a pre-tween female, and a female toddler. I have my sons over every weekend. About 4 years ago, my ex-wife opened up an online business, and she's been making 6 figures. While my wife is a stay-at-home mom, I make about $30K to support our family. So you can imagine how this difference has affected our 2 households. They live in a gated community. She drives a new car, and she and our sons go on 2 extravagant holidays a year. My sons come over this weekend and started to tell me and the girls that they're going on a Disney concierge cruise in the summer. My daughter started crying, saying, "Daddy, we want to go." And when I looked online for the prices, they were priced at $5,000 per person. It's been all they've talked about nonstop. I feel like their wealth is being shoved down our throats when we can barely afford to heat the house this Christmas. It's hard not to be hateful, but I sent her a long text saying to stop trying to make us feel less than. I also told my sons in private, please don't mention holidays or gifts around the girls. She replied by saying it's not her problem how we feel, and when she does nice things for the boys, my wife and I are the last people on her mind. Am I reading into this too much? Or am I the idiot for saying she's spiteful? Holy mother of projection, Batman! Your ex-wife is doing well for herself and wants to treat her children well, and you aren't part of the equation here. Stop being spiteful yourself and be better for your kids. You are the idiot. My favorite part is when he pointed out that X is still single, like that's the worst thing he could come up with about her. I'm sure she'll be sobbing into her Disney cocktails. I love how he adds that he had 3 more children with a new wife. Obviously, he had more children than he could afford and is now blaming his ex for his bad decision-making. They've been divorced for 10 years, and their youngest is a tween. OP has a tween with a new wife. Chances that OP was cheating? 99%. It's hilarious how he didn't expect anyone to do the math. Different people have different priorities. The ex-wife cares about making money to live comfortably, and OP prioritizes seeding several families in case we revert to feudalism and he needs to form alliances. So you got married a hot second after having divorced your wife, who had just given birth, then turned around and had a baby, and then 2 more, and now you're sad that your life didn't work out as well as hers? You are the idiot for having a stay-at-home mom while only making $30,000 a year with 5 kids. Get over your insecurities. Tell the new wife to get a job, learn how to budget, but most importantly, keep your nose out of your ex's financials. I, 27 female, and my husband, 31, are both vegan and have been since before we met. This is a big part of our lives and identity. My in-laws have a tradition of taking it in turn to host Christmas, and this year, our first year married will be our year. Every year, the family gets a large turkey and other meat and dairy products. About a week ago, my sister asked me if I had bought a turkey yet. I explained no and said I had some substitutes. She acted sort of uncomfortable, and a few days ago, she and my mother-in-law confronted me and said it was fine for me to not eat meat, but if I was going to host, I needed to at least let her buy and prepare the turkey to bring. I said no. My husband spoke to me and said that it was very important to him and his family to have a real turkey. I said that this is my house, and I can decide what I do and do not want in it. My husband and I argued, and he said that it was his house too, and he was allowed to let his family stay and enjoy Christmas dinner. I told him that no one was coming into my house with anything unless we both agreed. He called me selfish, and I refused to let us host. As of now, sister-in-law is going to host, and while my husband is going, I'm choosing not to do so. He's saying that I'm being selfish and forcing my beliefs onto his family. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. Not for not wanting meat in your home, I get it. That's very important to you. However, you should have declined to host Christmas because of your vegan beliefs. Instead, you decided you were just going to use substitutes for meat and cheese without telling anyone. That is not something you can do when you're part of a blended family. It's immature and selfish. Now you'll be spending Christmas alone because of it and possibly alienating your husband's entire side of the family. Are your beliefs on veganism really worth all of this? They didn't even tell her to buy meat, but also asked her if they could just bring the turkey, which is the tradition. She wouldn't even have to buy anything. I get why she doesn't want meat in the house, but this is a special occasion. OP's actions are textbook, this is why people hate vegans. How can she not see that herself? She also wasn't going to give anyone a heads up until someone asked directly about it. If they hadn't asked, The entire family would have shown up to a menu they didn't want to eat, and she would have ruined the occasion for the whole family. She was 100% using this as an opportunity to shame the family for not believing the way she does and shoving her ideology down their throats. Gonna take a wild guess the husband isn't vegan by his own choice. My parents were married and had me, a teen female, and my brother, 18. My dad had an affair with Kate, and my mom and he divorced. Ellie, a tween female, was the result of the affair, and Tommy, a younger tween male, was born when Dad married Kate. A year later, Kate died. My dad's family rallied around my half-siblings and tried to make up for the loss of their mother. My mom shared custody of my brother and me with my dad. He asked her to include Ellie and Tommy in her life after Kate died, and even told my brother and me a few times that they would be coming to Mom's with us and she'd be their new mom now too. My mom never did take Ellie or Tommy into her home. I don't even think she's ever interacted with them. When I look back at moments when everyone was present, she was always on one side with her family, and Dad was on another with his and my half-siblings. As they have gotten bigger, Ellie and Tommy expressed all the emotions you might have when you don't have a mom, but you sometimes share a home with kids who do. They get jealous, sad, and frustrated. They've asked us to share Mom with them and want to come along when they hear Mom is taking us on vacation. They wanted us all to spend Christmas together, all kinds of stuff. They also have just Dad's side of the family since none of Kate's wants to be in their lives. But we have both sets of grandparents and aunts and uncles involved in our lives. A few times over the years, Dad or my grandma or uncle have asked me if I dislike that my mom wouldn't open her heart to kids who are part of my family. Of course, I always said no because they're not her kids, and so it doesn't make sense to me that she would. My dad wanted to try and get my half-siblings' wish to come true for a Christmas where we're all together, including my brother and I and our mom. Mom said no. She didn't engage with him beyond her no. Ellie and Dad then tried to get me to talk Mom around, and I said no, and I told them I didn't want to do that. Ellie got upset hearing that and left. Dad and my grandparents then cornered me later and asked me how I could say that when I know that Ellie and Tommy feel left out and that they crave mothering. I told them I didn't care if they felt left out because it's not my mom's job to mother them, and I would never expect her to do it. Since one can't be fixed without the other thing happening, i.e. their feeling left out can't be fixed unless they feel like they now have a mom and my mom, then I realized it's not going to happen. They told me my mom could and should have a love for them as her children's siblings. I told them Dad should have thought about that before he cheated on her and got another woman pregnant while he was still married to Mom. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. The only idiots are your father and any family member who put into these kids' heads that your mother should have accepted them and loved them as if they were her own. I get you saying it to them, but you've got to understand that those kids have been brainwashed to believe your mother owed them something. Those kids need therapy and to be removed from your father's care because he's doing a lot of damage with his BS. The kids believe what Dad has taught them. They probably have issues with abandonment because Dad has spent years telling them that OP's mom should care for them. Instead, he should have explained that their mom loved them but is in heaven, and the OP has a different mom. If Dad wants all the kids to have Christmas together, then Dad can make that happen, not insist on Mom doing so. Dad is a lazy father and trying to pass his responsibilities on to his ex. I don't get why families act like this. Your mom has no responsibility to those kids whatsoever, and everything you've said about this situation is correct. Hold your ground, OP. This is so unfair to you and your mom for how they treat you. I hope they stop soon. Otherwise, they're really going to damage your relationship with one another. And you know deep down that no one in your dad's family would lift a finger to help any new children your mother might have had.